Good morning, people. Or actually, it's morning somewhere. It's almost 2 o'clock p.m. in Texas. I was up all night last night. Something's happened, and in the last week, again, which has happened before, I've been put on some sort of cycle where my primary account activity is happening on the other side of the world. So I need to be up overnight. And apparently, they don't want me working the really high profile accounts on the other side of the world comparable to the ones here. They've characterized them in whatever manner as having a lot of stress and distress, and unfortunately, they have not complemented the need with the appropriate kind of resources. They've been doing this for a long time. They take certain kinds of personality profiles. They take certain kinds of analytical capabilities. And they depress and degrade and depreciate them so that they can be available for discount with the understanding that whoever ends up getting them is, I don't even know because I never get to that stage. What I do get to is this understanding that without authentication and without verification in the moment of what the need is, that there is a request that is being made. And usually it is presented as if it is some sort of crisis that does not have the kind of resources it needs to respond, and instead has been offered resources that may in fact be counterproductive to the needs that it has. A lot of times, I believe this is based on preconceived ideas about what the demographic or what the other sorts of biological, physiological, or what you might even call superficial features are that they're trying to get as the representation of how it ends up manifesting once the resources are obtained and implemented, regardless of what the actual quality and kind of resource is at the point of origin of the request. So this has been going on for years, and I think it's absolutely 100% around why talking about transgender rights as being a civil right issue is completely inadequate. Nonetheless, we're onto another situation today. Like it or not, whatever you got here is what unfortunately is being called upon to address the situation. So you're going to have to respond to that without getting obsessed about race or demographic background as the primary identifier for what you consider to have legitimacy. If this is what is being called upon in this moment, somehow we're going to have to get beyond our obsession with appearances and deal with the substance of the matter. I've been following for a while these discussions about China's access to electric magnetic pulse weapons or some sort of capability to use an electric magnetic pulse device. And this is something that has been of concern to me because we have not disclosed what is actually going on with the nanotechnology in our society and how this nanotechnology is actually a part of our bodies because of ways it is introduced into our lives and into our actual bodies. My concerns have been specifically the water system and have been whatever it is that is in that patented technology that they put into immunizations and vaccines. Less than 2 years ago, there were protests on the streets of Italy. Less than 3 years ago, at least. People in Italy were on the streets protesting en masse. There were members of the Ministry of Health. These are respected biomedical researchers that were a part of the government a ministry saying that they were concerned that there had been this major drive to require immunizations throughout Italy, but that they had been doing research on the primary vaccines that were being required. And these vaccines had materials in them that you could see under a microscope, but were completely unidentifiable. This wasn't just junk that they had included. There were actual particulates in the actual vaccine itself that had not been identified. And these researchers were saying, what is this we're injecting into everybody's body? What is this we're injecting into our children? And at that time, I became very concerned myself because it seemed to correlate with things I was investigating here. This happens somewhere in another country, somewhere in another part of the world. Somebody expresses an alarm, it gets into the news, maybe just for a short period of time, but enough period of time, hopefully, for the people in other places who might be working on something comparable to see it and to understand maybe there's some connection with what they're talking about there with what I'm trying to bring exposure to here. I believe that I know that for over 15 years, for instance, there's been a special commission under the governor that originally was put in to replace aspects of the small business code in Texas that gave priority to businesses that were working on biotech, biomedicine, bioengineering, and nanotechnology. And I believe that under this sort of pseudo privilege of a gubernatorial commission, that they engaged a significant amount of unorthodox testing of nanotechnology under the auspices of it being connected to biotech, bioengineering, or biomedicine. Now, there's a lot of nanotechnology that's used in industrial technologies. I find nanotech stuff all the time when talking about how to deal with, for instance, cleaning clogs out of gas wells. Nanotechnology has many uses. It's not just, microscopic items. I'm not pretending I'm an expert, but I personally have been a human test subject involved with advanced processes connected to the application of radio frequency since I was a child. And despite the fact that they won't provide me with the actual documentation of what they've been observing for all these years, I have my own observations, and they're good enough for somebody to steal them. And then a couple months, maybe even a couple years down the line, they show up in patents for some other company's technology. So this is not a wild goose chase. But my concern is that, again, we're doing this thing where we are deflecting or projecting onto another country some sort of artificial, overinflated fear of them applying weaponized technologies that we ourselves are not only capable of, have already developed, but have actually been applying on our own people and have been refusing to acknowledge. And so this discussion or this concern about anything having to do with electromagnetic pulse weapons or any sort of electromagnetic pulse devices by China, I just want to say to you, just last night, I found an executive order by the mayor of New York that was dated the same day a weapons company released a press release about a new product line that is the kind of thing that would need to be availed of what was in that executive order. I've also read a lot about recent changes to the gaming licenses in the state of New York. That to me is a lot more concerning than projections about whether or not China would have the capability of launching an electromagnetic pulse weapon onto the US. Because when I see you putting that in there, my thing is like, I know what I found last night. What are my defensive options? And again, I'm being compelled to consider things outside of my own country because my own country won't be honest about what it's doing.